The night Arielle Cross went into labor, her husband was not pacing a hospital hallway. He was not answering his phone. He was not on his way. He was in a luxury hotel suite across town, sipping champagne with another woman, while his wife screamed through contractions alone. Arielle did not know that yet. She would not know for weeks. But when she finally found the receipt, tucked inside the breast pocket of his charcoal suit, dated the exact night their daughter entered this world, something inside her did not break. It went completely cold. If you have ever trusted someone completely, handed them everything, and watched them treat it like nothing, this story is for you. Because what Arielle did next was not what anyone expected. If this story speaks to you, please subscribe and follow along until the very end, because what happens next will stay with you. Hit the like button and drop a comment telling me what city or country you're watching from. I want to see how far this story has traveled. P.A. The morning Arielle brought Leora home from the hospital, she carried the baby through the front door herself. Damian held the door open. He did not reach for the infant carrier. He did not ask if Arielle needed anything. He glanced at the baby the way someone glances at a package they did not order, then walked toward his office and closed the door behind him. Arielle stood in the foyer of their 6,000-square-foot home in North Dallas, holding a 7-pound baby girl against her chest, and for a long moment she simply stood there. Her legs ached from 21 hours of labor. The incision from her emergency C-section burned with every breath. She had not slept in 3 days. The house was immaculate. Their housekeeper, Rosa, had come through the day before. Fresh flowers sat on the entryway table. Everything looked exactly the way it always looked. Expensive, curated, untouched. Arielle walked slowly to the nursery they had spent 4 months preparing together, lowered Leora into the crib, and then sat on the edge of the glider rocker and cried without making a sound. Not because she was sad. She was not sure yet what she was. She cried because she was exhausted in a way she had never been before, and the person she had built this room with was behind a closed door, and she was alone in a way that felt much older than this moment. She wiped her face. She picked up the baby when she cried. She kept moving. That was what Arielle did. She kept moving. She had married Damian Cross 5 years earlier in a ceremony that her mother, Carol, described afterward as the most beautiful thing I have ever seen and also slightly more expensive than my first house. Arielle had laughed at that. She had laughed easily back then. Damian was the kind of man who made rooms pay attention. He was tall, well-dressed without being showy, and he had a particular way of listening to you that made you feel like the most important person in whatever building you were both standing in. He had built a financial consulting firm from a 2-person operation into something with 40 employees and 3 regional offices, and he wore that success with enough confidence to be attractive, but not quite enough to be insufferable. Arielle had been 25 when they met. She had her own career at the time. She worked as an analyst for a mid-sized investment group downtown, and she had not been looking for anything serious. She had been focused, ambitious, a little guarded in the way that women who have worked hard tend to be guarded because they have learned that not everyone is equally impressed by their accomplishments. Damian had been impressed. Genuinely, it seemed. He asked about her work with real curiosity. He remembered details from previous conversations. He showed up when he said he would. She fell in love with him the way most careful people fall in love. Slowly at first, and then all at once. And then with the particular vulnerability of someone who has waited a long time to feel this way about another person. They married. They bought the house. They talked about children and built careers and took vacations to places that required passports. And then Arielle got pregnant, and they both said they were thrilled, and Damian bought a wooden rocking horse and assembled the crib himself on a Sunday afternoon, while Arielle photographed him from the doorway, and everything appeared, from any reasonable distance, to be exactly what it looked like. A happy life. The credit card statement arrived on a Tuesday. It was not even something Arielle went looking for. She handled the household finances. This had been the arrangement from the beginning, because Damian was better at earning money, and Arielle was better at managing it, and they had both agreed that was a logical division, and neither of them had ever questioned it. She downloaded the monthly statements, categorized the expenses in a spreadsheet, flagged anything unusual for tax purposes. It was February. Leora was 11 days old. Arielle was sitting at the kitchen table at 2 in the morning because the baby had finally fallen back asleep, and Arielle had discovered that the silence of the house was louder than the crying, and she could not sleep, so she had opened her laptop and begun working through the backlog of administrative tasks that had accumulated over the past 2 weeks. She was on her third line item when she stopped. The Beaumont Hotel. Suite accommodation. One night. $462. She stared at it. She opened the digital calendar she and Damian shared for scheduling purposes. She found the date. She looked at what he had entered for that evening. Investor dinner. Marcus Webb. May run late. She remembered that night. She had been 38 weeks pregnant and uncomfortable, and she had texted him at 9 o'clock to say goodnight because she knew he would be home late, and he had responded with a single thumbs-up emoji. She sat very still at the kitchen table. Then she closed the laptop and went to check on Leora and did not sleep at all that night. She did not say anything to him the next morning. She was not sure why. Part of it was exhaustion. Real, physical, bone-deep exhaustion that made confrontation feel like a mountain she did not have the energy to climb. Part of it was something else, something quieter and more frightening. She was not sure she wanted to know yet. Instead, she started watching. Arielle had always been an observer. It was part of what made her good at her job. She noticed patterns. She noticed when numbers did not add up, when projections were too optimistic, when someone's explanation of a situation did not quite align with the actual evidence. She had built an entire professional identity around the discipline of looking past what people presented and identifying what was actually happening underneath. She turned that skill on her own marriage, and once she started looking, she could not stop seeing. The phone, first. Damian had never had a phone password in all 5 years of their marriage. He left his device on the kitchen counter, on the nightstand, on the bathroom sink. She had never once gone through it, not because she was incurious, but because she had never felt she needed to. That openness had itself felt like evidence of nothing to hide. 3 days after she found the hotel charge, his phone required a 6-digit code. She noticed him notice her noticing. He said nothing. She said nothing. They moved around each other in the large, beautiful house like two strangers who had both arrived at the same hotel and been assigned rooms on the same floor. Then there were the hours. Damian had always worked late. That was not new. But there is a difference between working late and returning home at 11:45 on a Wednesday with restaurant breath and a vague explanation about a client call that ran long. And that difference is the particular quality of stillness that settles over a lie in the moment after it has been told. Arielle would nod. She would say, okay. She would go back to whatever she had been doing. She began photographing the credit card statements. The night she found the actual receipt was a Thursday. She had not been looking for it. She was gathering Damian's dry cleaning for Rosa to take in the morning. This was also her task, had always been her task, the invisible administrative labor of a household that ran on her attention. And when she reached into the inner pocket of his charcoal blazer, her fingers touched paper. She unfolded it slowly. Beaumont Hotel, Presidential Suite. One night. Check-in, 7:14 p.m. Check-out, 5:47 a.m. Champagne. Strawberries. Overnight valet parking. The date at the top of the receipt was January 14th. Arielle had been admitted to the hospital on January 13th at 6:30 p.m. She had labored through the night. Leora had been delivered at 4:22 a.m. on January 14th. Damian had arrived at the hospital at 7:15 a.m., still wearing the gray suit, claiming his phone had died. She had been in active labor at 7:14 p.m. He had been checking into a hotel suite. She had been pushing through an emergency surgical delivery at 5:47 a.m. He had been checking out. She stood in the walk-in closet for a very long time. The receipt was completely steady in her hands. She was not shaking. She folded it very carefully, placed it back in the pocket exactly as she had found it, and finished gathering the dry cleaning. She did not cry. She made a mental note to go back for the receipt before Thursday morning. She told Damian she knew on a Saturday afternoon. Leora was asleep. The house was quiet. Arielle had spent the previous 4 days photographing every document she could access: bank records, credit card statements, the hotel receipt, a series of charges at restaurants and luxury shops, that she had previously attributed to client entertainment and now understood differently. She had organized everything into a folder on a personal email account Damian did not know existed. She waited until he was sitting in the kitchen with his coffee and his phone and the particular relaxed posture of a man who believes he is not in danger. "I know about the hotel," she said. She did not sit down. Damian looked up from his phone. Something moved across his face, not guilt exactly, more like the expression of someone who has been playing a game and has just had it confirmed that their opponent knows the rules. "Arielle, the night Leora was born," she said, "you were at the Beaumont." He put the phone down. He looked at the table, and then he did something she had not anticipated. He did not lie. He did not construct an explanation. He simply looked at her with an expression that was somewhere between sorry and inconvenienced, and he said, "Yes." One word, delivered with the emotional weight of a man canceling a lunch reservation. "How long?" she said. "About 8 months." "Who?" He told her a name she did not recognize. A woman from another firm, apparently, someone he had met at a conference in Austin. Arielle nodded once, slowly. She was registering everything with the detached precision of someone taking notes, except the notes were burning straight through her chest. "And the night Leora was born," she said, "you knew I was in the hospital." "I know," he said. "You knew I was alone." "I know," he said again. Those 2 words. "I know. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I don't know what happened to me." Just a flat acknowledgement of a fact, as though she had pointed out that he had forgotten to refill the coffee maker. Arielle looked at her husband. This man she had loved with a completeness that she now understood had been entirely one-sided. And something inside her did not shatter. It simply closed. Like a door being shut very carefully, very quietly, by someone who has already decided they will never open it again. "Okay," she said. She walked out of the kitchen. She went to the nursery. She picked up Leora, who was awake now, blinking at the light with her dark, unfocused eyes, and she held the baby against her shoulder and said, very quietly, so that only Leora could hear, "We're going to be okay." She was not sure yet if that was true, but she said it like she meant it. And somewhere in the saying of it, she began, in the most fragile and necessary way, to believe it. She did not leave that week, or the next. People sometimes imagine that the moment of discovery is also the moment of departure. That revelation functions like a switch, that you learn the truth, and the truth propels you immediately and decisively toward the door. But that is not how it works. That is not how any of it works. What followed instead was a period that Arielle would later describe to no one as the heaviest 3 weeks of her life. She was still healing from the C-section. She was still nursing a newborn through the night. She was functioning on fragments of sleep stitched together into something that barely resembled rest. And she was doing all of this while living in a house with a man who had chosen a hotel suite over her labor room and could apparently accept that fact about himself without visible collapse. Damian moved through the house as though they had had a minor disagreement about something. He was not cruel. He was not confrontational. He was somehow more disturbingly simply normal. He made coffee. He went to the office. He occasionally looked in on the baby with the cautious curiosity of a man encountering something he is not certain belongs to him. He did not beg. He did not apologize again. He did not offer to end the affair. And Arielle watched all of this and understood, with a clarity that was at once devastating and strangely clarifying, that this was who he was, not who he had become, not a good man going through a crisis. This was the actual man. The other version, the one who had assembled the crib, the one who had listened to her talk about yield curves over dinner, the one who had held her face in both hands on their wedding day and said, "I see you." That version had been real enough, but it had been incomplete. She had loved a man who was capable of all of that, and also capable of this. And the terrible thing was that both things were true at the same time. She called her mother. Not to cry. She was not crying much. Carol Vaughn had raised Arielle alone after Arielle's father left when Arielle was 9, and she had done it with a particular brand of pragmatic, unsentimental love that had given Arielle both a deep capacity for feeling and a deep aversion to being undone by feeling. When Arielle called and told her mother what had happened, quietly, from the bathroom, with the faucet running, while Damian watched television 30 feet away. Carol listened without interrupting until Arielle finished. Then Carol said, "What do you need from me right now?" Not, "I'm so sorry," not, "I never trusted him." Just, "What do you need?" "I need someone to help me figure out what I'm actually allowed to take," Arielle said. "Legally, if I leave." "All right," her mother said. "Then let's figure that out." The attorney's name was Patricia Holden. She had an office in an unremarkable building in uptown Dallas, which Arielle reached by telling Damian she had a postpartum checkup and then driving 30 minutes in the opposite direction from the clinic. She brought Leora in the carrier because she had no one to leave her with, and she sat across from a 62-year-old woman with short gray hair and a no-nonsense demeanor who had spent 30 years in family law and who looked at Arielle the way someone looks at a person they have seen in this exact chair many times before. Arielle laid out the situation plainly. She was 30 years old. She had been married 5 years. She had left her career, partially, not entirely, but significantly, at Damian's encouragement during the pregnancy, with the understanding that she would return to work after the baby was born. They lived in a home appraised at $1.4 million. Damian's business was worth considerably more. She had documentation of the affair. She had credit card records, bank statements, the hotel receipt. She had not yet consulted a lawyer before today because she had not been certain she was leaving. "And now?" Patricia asked. "Now I'm certain," Arielle said. Patricia nodded. "Then here's what you're going to do." She was methodical. She explained what Arielle was entitled to under Texas community property law. She explained what documentation would matter in a custody proceeding. She explained the importance of not telegraphing her intentions, not moving money in ways that would appear retaliatory, not removing the child from the state without a formal custody arrangement in place. She explained all of this in the flat, informational tone of someone delivering weather data, and Arielle absorbed every word. "Document everything," Patricia said. "And I mean everything. Not for revenge, for protection." Arielle drove home with Leora asleep in the back seat. She sat in the car in the driveway of the mansion for a moment before going inside. She looked at the front of the house, the stone facade, the sculpted hedges, the double-height windows glowing amber in the late afternoon light, and she felt something she had not expected to feel. Nothing. Not grief. Not longing. Nothing. She got out of the car. She went inside. She picked up a legal pad and started making a list. It took her 6 more weeks to build the foundation. 6 weeks during which she continued to wake with the baby, to manage the household, to appear in all the ways that are expected of a woman in her position. 6 weeks during which Damian gave no indication that he had ended the affair, and Arielle gave no indication that she had consulted an attorney. She opened a bank account in her name only at a branch across town. She began transferring her legally entitled portion of their shared savings, slowly, precisely the amounts Patricia had advised, in a pattern that looked like routine household management to anyone who did not know what they were looking at. She called her former supervisor, a woman named Janet Briggs, who ran a financial consulting practice in Indianapolis, with whom she had stayed loosely in touch since leaving the industry. "I need to come back," Arielle said. "I know I've been out of the workforce for a year and a half. I know you don't owe me anything, but I need to come back, and I want to come back to something real." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Can you relocate?" Janet asked. "Yes," Arielle said. She had not told her she was leaving her husband. She simply said yes. "Give me 2 weeks," Janet said. Arielle packed slowly. A bag here, a bag there, stored in the back of the closet in the guest room where Damian never went. She packed Leora's essentials first: formula, diapers, the specific pacifier that was the only one Leora would take, a soft cotton blanket that had belonged to Arielle when she was an infant and that Carol had mailed to her last Christmas. She packed her own documents: birth certificate, social security card, passport, every photograph she had on her phone backed up to 3 separate cloud accounts. She left Damian's things exactly where they were. She did not want his things. On the morning of March 6th, while Damian was in the shower, she lifted Leora from the crib. She stood in the hallway of the house for a moment. She walked to the master bathroom, opened the door, and set her wedding ring on the edge of the sink. She did not look at herself in the mirror. She did not write a note. She picked up the baby and the go-bag she had staged beside the front door. She walked out. She did not look back at the house. She was not leaving her life. She was finally starting it. The drive north would take 16 hours. Leora slept in the back seat for the first 3. The radio was off. The highway unrolled in front of her in the gray early morning light, and Arielle drove with both hands on the wheel and her jaw set, and every mile that disappeared behind her felt less like running away and more like arriving somewhere she had always been heading. She was 30 years old. She had $4,300, an infant daughter, a job offer that was not yet confirmed in writing, and no plan beyond the next 24 hours. She had been more afraid before. She could not, at that moment, remember when. But she had also never in her life been more completely, terrifyingly, honestly herself. The first thing Arielle noticed about Indianapolis in March was that it was cold in a way Texas had never prepared her for. Not the dramatic cold of a storm system, not the kind of cold that announces itself. This was a flat, gray, indifferent cold that settled into everything. The parking lot of the extended stay motel where she pulled in at 11:40 at night. The vinyl seat of the car when she cut the engine. The air that hit her face when she stepped out to get Leora from the back seat. It was the kind of cold that did not care whether you were ready for it. Leora was awake. She had been awake for the last 2 hours of the drive, not crying exactly, making the low, rhythmic sounds of a baby who is uncertain about everything, and communicating that uncertainty in the only language available to her. Arielle unbuckled the carrier, lifted her out, pressed her against her chest, and stood in the parking lot of a motel she had booked on her phone at a gas station in Missouri, holding a 6-week-old infant, looking at a door with the number 114 on it. The room smelled like carpet cleaner and old heat. There were 2 double beds and a microwave on a shelf and a bathroom with a light that buzzed faintly when she turned it on. Arielle set Leora down on the center of the bed farthest from the door, built a perimeter around her with both pillows, and then sat on the edge of the other bed and put her face in her hands. She did not cry. She was past the place where crying felt like it would do anything. She sat there for maybe 4 minutes. Then she got up, heated a bottle in the microwave, fed Leora, changed her, swaddled her in the cotton blanket from Carol, and put her down. She set 3 alarms on her phone, one for the feeding in 2 hours, one for 6 a.m., one for 7 as backup. She lay down on the bed without taking her shoes off and stared at the ceiling. She was in Indianapolis. She had done it. She did not feel triumphant. She felt like a person who had just carried something very heavy, a very long distance, and had finally put it down and was now discovering how much her arms hurt. She slept for 90 minutes before Leora woke her. Janet Briggs called at 8:15 the next morning while Arielle was still in the motel room, Leora in the carrier strapped to her chest, eating a granola bar she had pulled from the go-bag because she had not yet located a grocery store. "Tell me where you are," Janet said without preamble. Arielle told her. A pause. Not judgment. Calculation. "All right. Can you come in Friday? I want you to meet the team before I make anything official." "Yes," Arielle said. "I need to find childcare first." "I know someone," Janet said. "Her name is Deborah. She runs a small home daycare about 8 minutes from the office. I'll text you her number. She has a spot opening up next week. Her other infant just aged out." Arielle stopped chewing. "How did you—" "I didn't," Janet said. "I'm just observant. I've known you for 7 years, Arielle. You don't relocate to a new city with a 6-week-old baby because things are going well." Arielle said nothing. "Friday," Janet said. 9 a.m. Dressed like you, still know what a quarterly report looks like." The line went dead. Arielle stood in the center of the motel room with Leora warm against her chest and the granola bar going stale in her hand, and something in her sternum shifted in a way she could not quite name. Not hope, exactly. Something more structural than hope, like a beam being slid into place. She found an apartment on Thursday. It was not much. Second floor of a converted duplex near a commercial strip, 1 bedroom, windows that faced a parking structure, radiator heat that clanked every time it cycled on. The landlord, a heavy-set man named Gerald who smelled like coffee and wore the same fleece vest both times she met him, told her she could move in immediately if she had first and last month's rent in certified funds. She had exactly enough. She signed the lease sitting on the floor of the empty apartment because there was no furniture. Leora was in the carrier. The pen ran low halfway through the signature page, and she had to press hard enough to leave an impression on the page beneath. She initialed every line Patricia Holden had told her to read carefully. She handed over the check. Gerald looked at the check, looked at her, looked at the baby. "You need anything before you move in?" he asked. "Heat's been acting up in this unit. I'll have someone look at it by the weekend." "I need it looked at before the weekend," she said. He blinked. "Sure," he said. "I can do that." She moved in that afternoon with 4 bags and a portable crib she had purchased at a Walmart 40 minutes away. She set up the crib in the bedroom. She put her own things in the closet. She made a list of what she needed and organized it by necessity. Diapers, formula, a coffee maker, a shower curtain because the one in the bathroom had been removed by the previous tenant, a lamp because the overhead fixture in the living room was missing its bulb. She bought only what was on the list. That night she slept on an air mattress she had found in the storage section of the Walmart, with Leora in the crib 3 feet away, and the radiator clanking every 12 minutes, and the parking structure lights casting orange shapes through the thin curtains. She slept 4 hours. It was the best sleep she had gotten in 6 weeks. Friday morning, she drove to Janet's office in a blazer she had not worn in 14 months. It fit differently now. Her body was still reconfiguring itself after the pregnancy, redistributing weight in ways she had not fully accounted for. And she stood in the motel parking lot, which was where she had changed since the apartment had no mirrors yet, tugging the hem down and deciding the blazer was going to have to do. Deborah, Janet's contact, had agreed to watch Leora for the morning. She lived in a small ranch house with a sunroom converted into the daycare space, and when Arielle pulled up and knocked, Deborah opened the door before her hand came down from the second knock. She was 60-something, with close-cropped silver hair and the efficient, unhurried manner of someone who had been doing this long enough to stop being nervous about new babies. She looked at Leora. She looked at Arielle. "She eat recently?" Deborah asked. "An hour ago. She'll need a bottle around 11. "I know how to feed a baby," Deborah said, but not unkindly. She held out her arms. Arielle transferred Leora. Her arms felt strange without the weight. Leora blinked at Deborah with the flat-faced scrutiny of the very young. "She's going to cry for about 10 minutes, Arielle said. "After that, she usually settles." "They always do," Deborah said. "Go do your thing." Arielle got back in the car. She sat there for a moment, then she drove to the office. Janet Briggs had aged in 7 years, but she wore it like someone who had earned every line. She was 51, brisk, with reading glasses perpetually pushed up on her head, and a handshake that meant something. She stood up when Arielle walked in and looked at her with the direct, assessing gaze of a woman who respects people too much to pretend not to notice things. "You look tired," Janet said. "I have a 6-week-old." "I know. Sit down." The meeting lasted an hour and 40 minutes. Janet walked her through the firm, 12 consultants, 3 senior managers, 2 major regional clients, and 1 national account that was currently their most demanding and most profitable. She talked about where the gaps were, what the team needed, what she expected from the people she brought in. "I need someone who can take the Harmon Group account off my plate," Janet said. "It's a manufacturing conglomerate, messy financials, the kind of client that will call you at 7 p.m. on a Friday with a question they could have emailed. It will eat your evenings sometimes." "I have a newborn," Arielle said. "My evenings are already eaten." Janet almost smiled. "Junior analyst title to start. Not because I think that's where you belong, but because I need HR to run the formal assessment before I can slot you in at the level I'm thinking. It'll be 6 weeks, maybe 8. Then we revisit." "What's the salary at junior level?" Janet told her. It was less than half of what Arielle had been earning when she left the industry. Arielle did the math in her head instantly. Rent, childcare once she moved Leora to Deborah full-time, formula, the cost of rebuilding a functional household from scratch, the car payment, the health insurance that was not going to be cheap as a new employee. It was going to be extremely tight, not impossible. Tight. "Okay," she said. "You're not going to negotiate?" "You said you'd revisit in 6 to 8 weeks. I'll negotiate then." Janet looked at her for a moment. "You start Monday," she said. She had not spoken to Damian since the morning she left. He called for the first time 4 days after she drove out of Dallas. She watched the phone ring and did not answer. He called again an hour later. Then he texted, "Where are you? Are you and the baby okay?" She responded once, "We're safe. I'll be in touch through counsel." He called 11 times over the next 6 days. He texted her mother, who responded with a single sentence and did not tell Arielle what it said. He texted her college roommate, a woman named Priya, who called Arielle immediately and said, "He sounds scared." And Arielle said, "He should have thought about that in January." And Priya said, "Yeah, you're right. What do you need?" What she needed was for time to move faster. That was not a thing anyone could give her. Patricia Holden filed the formal separation papers on March 19th. When Damian received the documents, he called Patricia's office and left a message saying he wanted to discuss the situation. Patricia's assistant called back and provided the number for his attorney referral directory. He hired a lawyer. The lawyer sent a letter. Patricia sent a letter back. This was the beginning of a correspondence that would continue for months and would cost Arielle, at points, money she did not have. But that was still ahead of her. In the immediate days after arriving in Indianapolis, what Arielle was dealing with was simpler and harder than legal strategy. She was dealing with the reality of being a single mother in an empty apartment in a city where she knew almost no one, working a job that started at 8 a.m. and required her brain to function at a level that felt, in those first weeks, like trying to run a marathon on 2 hours of sleep and a granola bar. The first Monday was the worst. She dropped Leora at Deborah's at 7:40. Leora cried, not the settling cry Arielle had promised, a real cry, a betrayed cry, the cry of a baby who has been handed to a stranger for the first time and has opinions about it. Arielle stood on Deborah's front step for 17 seconds, listening to that cry, and then turned and walked to the car because standing there was not going to help either of them. She cried in the car for 4 blocks. Then she stopped. She walked into Janet's office at 8:02. Her blazer still did not fit quite right. She had formula on the left cuff, which she had discovered in the elevator and blotted with a damp paper towel in the lobby bathroom. She sat down at the desk Janet had assigned her, opened the files on the Harmon Group account, and began reading. Her brain was slow. It was like trying to run code on a machine that needed a restart. The processing was happening, but there was lag, there was hesitation. There were moments when she would read the same sentence 3 times and the meaning would refuse to arrive. She read it a 4th time. The meaning arrived. She kept going. By 11, she had a working understanding of the account structure. By 1, she had identified 2 areas where the previous analyst's projections seemed optimistic in ways that were going to cause problems in Q3. She wrote up her observations in a brief memo and left it on Janet's desk. Janet appeared in her doorway at 3:30. "This is good," Janet said, holding the memo. "The Q3 liability exposure is understated," Arielle said. "Whoever built the model didn't account for the raw material contract renegotiation." "I know," Janet said. "I've been meaning to address it for 2 weeks." She paused. "How's your head?" "What?" "You look like you haven't slept since February." "I haven't slept since February." Janet nodded. "Go get your daughter. Come back tomorrow. Don't try to prove anything on day 1. "I'm not trying to prove anything," Arielle said. "I'm trying to do the job." Janet looked at her for a moment in the specific way that means I believe you, and that's exactly what I'm worried about. Then she left. The call from Damian's lawyer arrived on a Thursday evening in late March. Arielle was at the kitchen table. The card table she had bought at a thrift store, the only table she had, feeding Leora with one hand and reviewing a document on her laptop with the other, which was not efficient but was the only way she had figured out how to do 2 things at once. Her phone rang. She looked at the number, recognized it from the previous correspondence, and answered it. "Ms. Vaughn," said the lawyer. His name was Hendricks, and he had the smooth, professional voice of a man who billed by the quarter hour. "I'm reaching out on behalf of my client regarding the custody arrangement for the minor child." "I have an attorney," Arielle said. "You should be contacting her." "I understand that. I'm reaching out directly as a courtesy, to see if there's room for an informal conversation before this becomes adversarial." "Mr. Hendricks," she said, "your client was not in the hospital the night his daughter was born because he was at a hotel with another woman. We are already adversarial. Please contact Patricia Holden." She hung up. Leora looked up at her with wide, uninvested eyes. "I know," Arielle said to the baby. "I know." She set the phone face down on the table and went back to the document. But her hands were not quite steady, and she noticed that, and she made herself breathe slowly until they were. The thing about rebuilding a life from almost nothing is that it does not feel like building. It feels like maintenance. It feels like holding something together with both hands while also being expected to use those hands for everything else. April arrived and Arielle was still on the air mattress because a real bed was not yet in the budget. She was eating mostly what she could make quickly: rice, canned beans, eggs, the occasional rotisserie chicken from the grocery store that she stretched across 3 meals. She had joined a mom and baby class at the community center on Saturday mornings, not because she felt social, but because Deborah had told her Leora needed stimulation, and the class was free. She sat in a circle of women she did not know, bouncing an infant on her knee, learning the first names of people whose last names she would not ask for weeks. One of them, a woman named Sandra, whose own daughter was 4 months old, and who had the pragmatic, slightly shell-shocked energy of someone navigating something difficult, handed Arielle a coffee one morning without being asked. "You look like you needed it more than I did," Sandra said. Arielle looked at the coffee cup. She looked at Sandra. "Thank you," she said, and meant it more than those 2 words usually mean. Sandra shrugged. "I've been where you look like you are. It gets less terrible." "When?" Sandra thought about it. "Around month 4, maybe 5, and then something will happen and it'll feel terrible again, but the baseline shifts." It was the most useful thing anyone had told her since leaving Texas. The legal correspondence escalated in May. Damian's lawyer filed a motion contesting the separation terms, specifically the financial arrangements, specifically the amount Arielle had withdrawn from the shared accounts before leaving. Hendricks characterized it in documents that Patricia forwarded to Arielle as unilateral asset removal during a period of marital crisis. Arielle read those words 3 times. She called Patricia. "Is he serious?" she said. "He is," Patricia said. "It's a tactic. He knows the amounts you withdrew were within your legal entitlement. He's hoping the motion creates enough noise to give him leverage in the custody conversation." "He wants custody?" "Visitation. He's framing it as wanting to be involved. His attorney is arguing that relocating out of state without a formal custody order in place constitutes interference." Arielle was standing in the kitchen of the apartment. The radiator was making its noise. Leora was in the portable crib in the bedroom, finally asleep after 40 minutes of walking. "He wasn't there when she was born," Arielle said. Her voice was very even. "He wasn't there for the first 6 weeks. He has met her exactly once, in the hospital, after the fact." "I know," Patricia said, "and all of that is documented. But we need to respond formally to this motion, which means billing hours, and I want to make sure you're prepared for that." The hours would cost money Arielle did not have in reserve. She did have it, barely, if she was careful for the next 2 months. "Respond," she said. "Are you sure? We could—" "Respond," she said again. Patricia responded. The counterfiling landed on Damian's lawyer's desk on a Tuesday. Patricia had been methodical and devastating in the way that good family attorneys are devastating, not through aggression, but through specificity. She documented the hotel receipt. She documented the date. She documented every credit card charge, every unanswered call, every text message Damian had sent during the first weeks of his daughter's life, which totaled 11, the last of which had been sent while inquiring about the location of his passport. She documented that Damian had made no child support payment, formal or informal, since the separation. She documented that in 3 months he had not requested a single scheduled call to see his daughter. Arielle did not know exactly what happened on Damian's end when he received those documents. She learned about it secondhand, through Priya, who had heard it from someone who still moved in Damian's social orbit. His business partner, a man named Kevin Marsh, had confronted him. Not about the marriage. Kevin had known about the affair, apparently, and had said nothing, which was its own reckoning for Arielle when she eventually learned it. But about the motion, about the legal maneuvering, about the fact that Damian's personal situation was now creating professional exposure. The conversation, from what Priya had been told, had been brief and not quiet. Kevin had told Damian that the firm could not absorb the reputational damage of a custody dispute in which Damian's behavior on the night of his child's birth was part of the public record. Damian had told Kevin to stay out of his personal life. Kevin had told Damian that was going to be difficult since Damian's personal life was becoming everyone's problem. The partnership had not ended that day, but something cracked in it. The kind of crack that starts small and does not stay that way. Arielle found out about the crack, not from Priya, but from a different source entirely. A former colleague of Damian's who reached out to Arielle directly on a professional network, ostensibly to offer a work referral, but really, it became clear within 2 messages, to ask if it was true that she and Damian had separated. She confirmed it briefly and disengaged from the conversation. But the fact of it, the fact that people in Dallas were asking, that the version of their marriage Damian had presumably been maintaining was becoming harder to maintain, settled somewhere in her chest with a weight she had not expected. Not satisfaction. Something more complicated. Because it still hurt. She needed to be honest with herself about that. The anger had been useful. The anger had gotten her out of the house, into the car, up the highway, through the first brutal weeks. But underneath the anger was something she had not yet fully looked at, something that still hurt in the specific way that things hurt when they were real and when they had mattered. She had loved him. That was the part that did not resolve cleanly. She had loved him, and she had built things with him. And whatever he had turned out to be, whatever he had done, the love itself had been genuine and the loss of it was real. She let herself sit with that on a Sunday afternoon while Leora slept and the apartment was quiet and there was nothing that needed doing immediately. She sat on the air mattress with her knees pulled up and she did not reach for her phone or her laptop or her list. She sat with the loss. 20 minutes. Maybe a little more. Then Leora made a sound. Arielle got up. The point at which everything stopped being something she could manage quietly came on a Wednesday in early June. She was in a meeting with Janet and 2 senior managers when her phone buzzed. She had it face down on the table. She kept it face down in meetings. It was her rule. And she ignored it. It buzzed again. She ignored it again. It buzzed a 3rd time. She turned it over. 3 texts from a number she did not recognize. The text said, "He's not going to stop. You should know that. She's going to find out you took his daughter across state lines without permission. That's parental abduction. Look it up." She read the text once. She set the phone face down again. She listened to the rest of the meeting. She contributed 2 observations about the Harmon Group presentation that Janet had asked for. She waited until the meeting ended and both managers had left the room. Then she showed Janet the texts. Janet read them. Her expression did not change much. She had the particular stillness of someone who has seen a version of this before and knows the distance between a threat and an actual legal problem. "Did you cross state lines without a custody order in place?" Janet asked. "There was no custody order. We hadn't filed anything yet." Patricia said, "Did Patricia advise you on the relocation before you left?" Arielle paused. "I told her I was planning to leave. She told me not to remove the child from Texas without a formal arrangement. I left before the arrangement was in place." The silence in the room was a specific kind. "I know," Arielle said. "I know I should have waited, but I couldn't." She stopped. She pressed her lips together. She was not going to explain in Janet's conference room what it had been like to live in that house for 6 more weeks after finding the receipt, watching Damian continue his life with the same easy detachment. She had done what she had to do. She knew now that it had exposed her legally. She had known it then, too, somewhere beneath the decision, and had made the choice anyway. "Call Patricia today," Janet said. "Right now, if you can." Arielle nodded. "And Arielle?" Janet waited until she looked at her. "Whoever sent those texts is not a lawyer. This is someone trying to rattle you. Don't let them." "I'm not rattled," Arielle said. Janet looked at her steadily. "You're a little rattled. That's okay. Just don't let it show for the next 8 hours, and then go home and call your attorney." Arielle called Patricia from the car at lunch. Patricia listened. Her voice, when she responded, had the measured quality of someone choosing their words carefully, not to obscure information, but to transmit it accurately. "The texts are likely coming from someone close to Damian," Patricia said. "Possibly his attorney, which would be a conduct issue I'd want to look into. Possibly someone in his personal circle. Either way, they're attempting to create fear around a decision that is not as clean legally as I would have liked, but which is also not the catastrophe they're implying. But I did technically. You relocated without a formal order in place, yes. However, there was no order prohibiting you from doing so. There is a meaningful difference between relocating before a custody order exists and violating an existing order. The first is a complication. The second is what they're describing, and that is not your situation. Arielle exhaled. What I need you to do, Patricia said, is document those texts, send them to me, and say nothing further to whoever sent them. And I need you to understand that this escalation tells us something important. What does it tell us? It tells us that our counterfiling landed, that Damian has seen the documentation, and the documentation scared him, and now someone in his orbit is trying to regain leverage through intimidation rather than through legitimate legal argument. Patricia paused. We respond to that by doing exactly what we've been doing. We document. We file. We don't engage emotionally. Arielle sat in the car in the parking garage below Janet's building. The concrete was the color of old bone. A car started somewhere above her, the engine sound bouncing off the walls. He's not going to stop, is he? She said. No, Patricia said. Not yet. Men in his position rarely do at first. They're used to winning through pressure. When the pressure doesn't work, they usually escalate once more before they back down. And when they escalate, then we're ready, Patricia said. Are you ready? Arielle thought about the air mattress, the card table, the blazer that did not quite fit, the formula she had measured to the last scoop to make sure she didn't run out before payday, the 17 seconds on Deborah's front step listening to her daughter cry. Yes, she said. She meant it in a different way than she had meant it before. Not as certainty about what was coming, as certainty about herself. About the fact that she had already survived the thing that was supposed to break her, and whatever came next was not going to be worse than that. The night in a hospital room alone, the receipt in a blazer pocket, the silence of a man who could say, I know where another man would have said, I'm sorry. She had already crossed the point of no return. She had crossed it the morning she set her ring on the bathroom sink and picked up her daughter and walked out the door without looking back. Everything from here was not retreat and not escape. It was forward. Only forward. And she was not going to stop. The reassessment meeting with Janet happened on a Thursday morning in late July, 8 weeks after Arielle had started. Janet closed the office door, which she did not usually do for routine check-ins, and sat down across from Arielle with a folder that had the HR evaluation form on top and something else underneath it that Arielle could not see yet. The formal review puts you at senior analyst level, Janet said, which is where I told you we'd revisit. Okay, Arielle said. The salary adjustment is 15% above what we discussed in March. Janet slid the offer letter across the desk. Arielle looked at the number. It was not what she had been earning in Dallas. It was closer than the junior rate had been. It was, more importantly, enough. Not comfortable, but enough with careful management to stop measuring every grocery item against the weekly budget before putting it in the cart. I'll take it, she said. You're not going to negotiate this time either? The number is fair, Arielle said, and you gave me a chance when you didn't have to. I'd rather build equity here than win an extra $2,000 on paper. Janet looked at her the way she sometimes looked at her, with a kind of banked respect that she expressed through directness rather than warmth. The Harmon Group lead presented your Q3 analysis to their board last week, she said. They specifically asked who built the liability model. Arielle said nothing. I told them your name, Janet said. I'm telling you that now because in about 3 months someone is going to offer you a job, and I want you to at least let me counter before you decide. Arielle almost smiled. Okay? That's all, Janet said, and opened the door again. Arielle walked back to her desk. She sat down. She looked at the offer letter for a moment longer than she needed to, then placed it in her bag and opened the Harmon Group file. The relief was not loud. It never was, with her. It was just the absence of a pressure that had been sitting on her chest for 4 months, and the absence felt, in its own quiet way, enormous. She moved the air mattress to the curb on a Saturday in August. She had bought a real bed the weekend before, a queen frame and mattress from a furniture clearance place south of downtown. Nothing expensive, nothing beautiful, but real and solid and hers. She had assembled it herself on a Friday night after Leora was asleep, following the instructions with a flashlight because the overhead bulb in the bedroom had burned out, and she had not yet replaced it. 2 of the bolts had cross-threaded, and she had spent 20 minutes working them loose with a combination of the wrong tool and considerable profanity before getting it right. She had lain down on the mattress at 11:15 that night, still in her work clothes, and looked at the ceiling. The radiator clanked. She did not care. It was her ceiling, her radiator, her apartment, with its parking structure view and its buzzing bathroom light and its card table and the drawing Leora had made at Deborah's that week. 4 months old and not technically capable of drawing, but Deborah had pressed the baby's hand into finger paint and pressed it to paper, and the handprint hung on the refrigerator held up by a magnet that said Indianapolis in block letters, which Arielle had bought at a gas station for no reason she could fully articulate. She lay there, and she thought, "This is the realest room I have ever slept in." Then she fell asleep and did not wake up until Leora cried, and the crying sounded different from this room, warmer somehow, and she got up and went to the baby and fed her and stood at the window while Leora ate, looking at the parking structure in the dark, and she thought, "We are going to be okay." Not as a reassurance this time, as a conclusion. The escalation when it came did not announce itself. It arrived on a Monday morning in September in the form of a phone call from Patricia Holden at 7:48 a.m., which was 13 minutes before Arielle was supposed to drop Leora at Deborah's, and 22 minutes before she was supposed to be at her desk. "I need you to come into the office today," Patricia said. "Not this afternoon. This morning, before 9 if you can." Arielle was standing in the kitchen with a bottle in one hand and her work bag on her shoulder, and something in Patricia's voice, the careful, contained quality of someone managing information, moved through her like a cold current. "What happened?" she said. "There's been a development in the custody case. I want to walk you through it in person." "Patricia, tell me now." A pause. 2 seconds. 3. "Damian's attorney has filed a motion alleging that you deliberately concealed the child's location for the first 4 months after leaving Texas, that you denied the father meaningful access, and that the relocation constitutes a pattern of parental alienation." Patricia's voice was steady. "He is seeking an emergency custody evaluation and is requesting that a guardian ad litem be appointed for Leora." Arielle set the bottle down on the counter. "He's also submitted a declaration," Patricia continued, "from someone claiming to have personal knowledge that you were aware, prior to leaving, that Damian intended to seek reconciliation and formal custody arrangements, and that you relocated specifically to prevent that." "Who?" Arielle said. "The declaration is from a woman named Renata Voss. Do you know that name?" Arielle stood very still. She knew that name. Renata Voss was Kevin Marsh's wife. Kevin Marsh was Damian's business partner. Renata was someone Arielle had met at firm events, at Christmas parties, at the kind of quarterly social gatherings that existed to give business partnerships the texture of friendship. They had never been close. They had been pleasant to each other in the way that women married to business partners are pleasant to each other, careful, surface level, a warmth that served a function. "What does her declaration say?" Arielle said. Patricia read it. It said that Arielle had confided in Renata during a phone call in February, after discovering the affair, before leaving Texas, that she planned to take the baby and disappear, that she intended to make it as difficult as possible for Damian to have any relationship with his child, and that her goal was, in Renata's phrasing, to destroy him the way he destroyed her. Arielle listened to every word. When Patricia finished, the kitchen was completely quiet except for Leora making small sounds in the portable crib in the next room. "I never spoke to Renata Voss in February," Arielle said. "I believe you," Patricia said. "I never called her. I barely knew her. We had maybe 6 conversations in 5 years, all of them at events, none of them about anything personal." "I believe you," Patricia said again. "But the declaration exists, and it has been submitted to the court, and we need to respond to it with evidence that contradicts it. That means phone records. It means demonstrating that no call between you and Renata Voss occurred in February, Can you pull your phone records from that period? Yes, Arielle said. Her voice was absolutely flat. Good. Send them to me today. I'll have my assistant help you parse them if needed. I'll do it myself, Arielle said. She hung up. She stood in the kitchen for 30 seconds. Then she picked up the bottle. She went to Leora. She fed the baby with her jaw set and her eyes fixed on the middle distance and her hands completely, deliberately controlled. She did not let herself feel anything yet. There was not time to feel anything yet. She dropped Leora at Deborah's 8 minutes late. Deborah opened the door and looked at Arielle's face and said nothing about the time. Bad morning? Deborah said. Legal thing, Arielle said. Deborah took the baby. She'll be fine. Go handle it. Arielle drove to Patricia's office instead of work. She texted Janet on the way. Legal emergency. In by 10. Janet responded, take what you need. 3 words. No drama. That was one of the things about Janet that Arielle had come to understand was rarer than it looked. Patricia's office was the same unremarkable building in uptown Dallas she had first visited in February, except Arielle was in Indianapolis and Patricia was in Dallas, which meant what Arielle drove to was not Patricia's office, but the office of a local attorney. Patricia had a professional relationship with a woman named Carla Reyes, who handled family cases in Indiana, and who had been looped into the case for jurisdictional purposes since May. Carla was 38, sharp-featured, with the unhurried precision of someone who has learned that rushing makes you miss things. She had the phone records spread on her desk by the time Arielle arrived. Arielle had emailed them from the parking garage, and she had already run a preliminary review. There is no call between your number and Renata Voss's number in February, Carla said. There is no call between your number and Renata Voss's number at any point in the last 14 months. The declaration she submitted describes a conversation that, based on phone records, did not take place. I know that, Arielle said. I told you it didn't happen. I know. I'm telling you we can prove it. So what happens now? Carla leaned back slightly. We submit the records to the court and formally challenge the declaration's validity. If we can demonstrate that the phone call Renata Voss described did not occur, the declaration is significantly compromised, and the motion it supports weakens considerably. Significantly compromised, Arielle repeated. Not thrown out. The court will weigh the evidence. Damian's attorney will argue that the call may have taken place on a different phone or through a third-party messaging platform, or that Renata's recollection of the date is imprecise. We counter with your complete phone history and challenge them to produce any technical evidence of the communication they're describing. The burden shifts. Arielle looked at the phone records on Carla's desk. Months of her own movements, documented. Every call to her mother, to Priya, to Janet, to Deborah. Patricia's number appearing with regularity from March onward. Her former Dallas colleagues tapering off as the weeks passed. A record of a life reorganizing itself. Why would she lie? Arielle said. Not a question directed at Carla, a question she was asking herself out loud without meaning to. Carla looked at her carefully. I've seen this pattern, Carla said. Someone in the social circle of the other party is asked, or pressured, or incentivized to provide a statement. Sometimes the person genuinely misremembers. Sometimes they're doing a favor. Sometimes there's financial or relational pressure involved. She paused. You said her husband is Damian's business partner. Was, Arielle said. I think. I'm not certain of the current status. That relationship would be worth looking into, Carla said. Priya called that evening. Arielle was sitting on the real bed, Leora asleep in the next room, the apartment quiet in its particular way. Traffic sounds from the street below, the radiator, the occasional footstep from the unit above. I heard something today, Priya said. And I need to tell you, but I also need you to not ask me how I heard it, because I'm not going to say, and I need you to respect that. Okay, Arielle said. Renata Voss's husband, Kevin, his firm has been having financial problems, serious ones. I don't know the details, but the partnership with Damian has been their main revenue stabilizer for a couple of years. If that partnership collapses, Kevin's firm goes with it. Arielle was quiet. Someone told me, Priya continued, choosing her words with the care of someone crossing ice, that Damian made it known that the partnership was contingent on people around him being supportive during the legal situation. He leveraged the partnership, Arielle said. I don't know that. I'm telling you what I heard. He told Kevin that if Kevin's wife helped him in the custody fight, the partnership stayed intact. I don't know that, Priya said again, but more quietly. But that's what it sounds like. Arielle pressed the phone against her ear and stared at the wall. The orange glow of the parking structure came through the curtains. She had been in this apartment for 6 months. She had built something here. Small, imperfect, genuinely hers. And Damian was in Dallas dismantling the supports around her from a distance, using people she had sat next to at dinner parties, people who had smiled at her and asked about the pregnancy and admired photographs of Leora at company events. Thank you, she said to Priya. I'm sorry, Priya said. I'm really sorry, Arielle. Don't be. This is useful. That's not... Priya stopped. You don't have to do that. You don't have to be okay. Arielle closed her eyes for a moment. I know, she said. I'll call you tomorrow. She sat on the bed after the call ended, and she let it arrive. The thing she had been holding at arm's length since 7:48 that morning. The particular rage of being lied about. Not just the lie itself, but the specific shape of it. A woman she had been cordial to. A woman who had no legitimate grievance against her had signed a legal document containing fabricated words attributed to Arielle, had looked at a blank declaration form and written down something that never happened, and signed her name to it and submitted it to a court that was going to use it to make decisions about Arielle's daughter. She sat with that. She did not throw anything. She did not call anyone else. She breathed through it the way you breathe through something that has no resolution in the immediate moment, because the immediate moment is not where this gets fixed. Then she opened her laptop and wrote Carla a 3-paragraph email detailing what Priya had told her and asking how, if at all, the potential coercion of a witness could be raised in the proceedings. She sent it at 10:47 p.m. Carla responded at 11:19, which told Arielle something about Carla that she filed away. This is exactly the kind of context that matters. Let me make some calls tomorrow morning. Don't discuss this with anyone else for now. The guardian ad litem was appointed in October. Her name was Dr. Miriam Cole, and she was a clinical psychologist who had done court-appointed evaluations for family cases for 11 years, and who arrived at Arielle's apartment on a Tuesday afternoon with a canvas bag, a legal pad, and the particular quality of professional neutrality that is not warmth, but is not coldness either. It is simply the careful suspension of personal response in the service of accurate observation. Arielle had cleaned the apartment the night before with a thoroughness she immediately recognized as anxiety, and then made herself dial back, because an apartment that looks like it was prepared for a photo shoot does not look like a home. And what Dr. Cole was here to assess was a home. The apartment looked like what it was: small, tidy, lived in. Leora's things were in their places. The handprint on the refrigerator, the shelf of board books Deborah had given them when she cycled out her daycare library, a mobile above the crib that Arielle's mother had mailed in a flat-rate box with a card that said, "From Grandma Carol. Everything's going to be fine, and I mean it." Dr. Cole sat in the living room. She asked questions in the unhurried way of someone who is not trying to catch anyone in anything, but who is genuinely building a picture. She asked about Leora's routine, her sleeping pattern, her eating, her development milestones. She asked about the daycare, about Deborah, about how Leora responded to new people. She asked about Arielle's work schedule and how she managed childcare when the work ran long. She asked about Damian. "What would you want your daughter to know about her father when she's old enough to understand?" Dr. Cole asked. Arielle looked at her directly. "I want her to know the truth," she said. "Not my version of it, the actual documented facts of what happened and what didn't." "That's a careful answer," Dr. Cole said. "I spent a long time not being careful enough," Arielle said. "I'm being careful now." Dr. Cole wrote something on the legal pad. She asked 3 more questions. She asked to see Leora's room. She stood in the doorway and looked at the crib, the mobile, the small stack of soft toys on the shelf, the nightlight that projected pale stars on the ceiling. She did not say anything for a moment. Then she turned and looked at Arielle and said, "She seems settled here." "She is," Arielle said. Dr. Cole nodded once, made a note, and began gathering her things. The evaluation report reached Carla's desk 3 weeks later. Carla called Arielle on her lunch break, and Arielle walked to the far end of the parking garage, where there was a pocket of privacy between two support columns, and she stood there in her blazer in the October wind that funneled through the concrete structure and listened. The report was largely favorable. Dr. Cole had noted Leora's clear attachment to her primary caregiver, the stability of her routine, the quality of her care environment, and the evident effort Arielle had made to provide consistency despite significantly constrained resources. She had noted Arielle's employment status, her professional trajectory, her social support network, Deborah, Sandra, the community center group, Carol, Priya, from a distance. "What does she say about Damian?" Arielle asked. Carla paused for a fraction of a second that was long enough to mean something. She notes that in 7 months, Damian Cross has made no direct request through legal channels to speak with or visit his daughter. That the child support order established in August has been paid once, in September, and not since. That during her separate interview with his representative, he declined to be interviewed in person, there was a lack of specific knowledge about the child's current developmental stage that she found notable. "He doesn't know her," Arielle said. Not angrily, just stating it. "He does not appear to have made significant effort to," Carla said. Dr. Cole is careful in how she phrases it. But yes, that's the substance. "So the motion is in trouble," Carla said. "But Arielle, I need you to be prepared for something." The wind pushed through the garage again. A car started 2 levels up, the sound bouncing down through the concrete. "Damian's attorney filed a supplemental motion this morning," Carla said. "He is now alleging financial misconduct. Specifically, he is claiming that the funds you withdrew from the shared accounts before leaving were in excess of your legal entitlement and were used to finance what he's calling a deliberate relocation scheme. He is seeking a forensic accounting review of your finances from the date of your marriage to the present." The present. Her present. The card table she had replaced with a real table 2 months ago. The grocery budget she tracked to the dollar. The single pair of work shoes she had resold rather than replaced. "A forensic accounting review," she said. "Yes." "Of my current finances." "Yes." "He wants to look at my bank account." "He wants to look at everything," Carla said. "This is a pressure tactic. He wants you to feel exposed. The amounts you withdrew were within your legal entitlement. Patricia documented that from the beginning, but the process of responding to a forensic review is expensive and time-consuming and disruptive, and I think that's the point." Arielle pressed her back against the concrete pillar. She looked at the ceiling of the parking garage. A bird had gotten in somewhere. She could hear it moving somewhere above her, wings against concrete, looking for a way out. "How much will this cost me?" she said. Carla told her. The number was not impossible. It was, however, the number that would require her to spend the savings she had been rebuilding since spring. The small, careful, deliberate reserve she had been building against the next emergency. The first real financial cushion she had constructed since arriving in Indianapolis with $4,000 and a newborn. It would empty the cushion, and then there would be nothing between her and the next thing. "I need 24 hours, Arielle said. "Take the weekend," Carla said, "but not longer. We need to file a response by next Thursday." Arielle stayed in the parking garage for a few minutes after the call. The bird was still moving somewhere above her. She could not see it, but she could hear it. Quick, uncertain movements against the structure. The sound of something that had gotten somewhere it never intended to be and was trying to find the logic of its situation. She understood that. She pushed off the pillar and walked back toward the building. She called her mother that night. Carol picked up on the second ring, which she always did, as if she kept the phone in her hand for exactly this reason. "He's filing a forensic review," Arielle said, "of everything. He wants to go through my bank account." "Can he do that?" "Apparently." Carol was quiet for a moment, not the quiet of someone who has nothing to say, the quiet of someone deciding what to say first. "How much do you need?" Carol said. "Mom." "How much?" "I'm not taking money from you." "Arielle." Carol's voice had the particular quality it got when she was done with a discussion that she considered settled. "I raised you by myself on a teacher's salary and a lot of stubborn. You know where you got the stubborn. Stop performing independence for 2 minutes and tell me how much." Arielle pressed her hand over her eyes. She told her. Carol was quiet again. A shorter quiet this time. "I have it," Carol said. Not all in checking. Let me move some things around. Give me until Monday. I'll pay you back. I know you will. You always have. A pause. Arielle? Yeah. He's doing this because it's working on you. Don't let it. It's not working on me. It is a little, Carol said. Not cruelly, just accurately. And that's okay. You're human. But don't let the little bit become a lot bit. You have more than he does. He has more money than I do, Mom. I didn't say money, Carol said. The forensic review request was the crack in the wall that let in the flood. Because what the review uncovered, not in Arielle's finances, which were as clean and documented as Patricia had always said they were, was something none of them had anticipated. During the discovery process required by the forensic motion, Carla filed a counter request for financial disclosure from Damian's side. Standard legal procedure. Damian's attorney objected. The objection was overruled. The disclosure was ordered. What came back was not what anyone expected. Damian's business, which had been presented throughout the proceedings as a stable, profitable enterprise worth a specific appraised value that had factored into the separation agreement calculations, was not what it had been represented to be. The forensic accountant Carla retained, a dry, meticulous man named Howard Pell, who seemed to find human drama irrelevant in the presence of numbers, produced a report in November that Carla walked Arielle through on a video call while Arielle sat at her kitchen table with a glass of water she kept forgetting to drink. The firm had been losing revenue for 14 months. The primary client, an energy company that had represented 40% of the firm's income, had quietly terminated their contract in August of the previous year, 4 months before Leora was born. Damian had not disclosed this in the separation agreement negotiations. The financial picture he had presented, and that Patricia had used as the basis for Arielle's settlement calculation, had been based on projections that assumed a client relationship that no longer existed. Arielle had settled for significantly less than she was entitled to, because Damian had lied about the value of what he had. Arielle sat at the kitchen table and looked at Howard Pell's report that Carla had shared on screen, and she read the relevant pages twice, and then she set the glass of water down and looked at the wall and felt something move through her that was not quite any single emotion. Not rage exactly, not grief, not shock. It was more like the specific feeling of a floor giving way. The particular sensation of finding out that the ground you built everything on was never as solid as you were told. She had left Dallas believing she understood the full scope of what he had done to her. She had been wrong. The affair had been the thing she could see. This had been invisible, buried in financial statements she had been deliberately kept from understanding accurately, executed with a patience and calculation that required a level of sustained deception she had not believed him capable of. She had thought he was careless, selfish, certainly, reckless with people he was supposed to love. She had not thought he was deliberate. "Arielle," Carla said on the screen. "Are you with me?" "Yes," Arielle said. "This changes the settlement calculation significantly. Patricia is already reviewing. We believe you are owed a substantial difference between what you received and what the agreement should have reflected." "How substantial?" Carla told her. The number was large enough that Arielle's first response was to not believe it. Her second response was to understand that not believing it was a habit she had developed to protect herself from disappointment and that she needed to set it aside and listen. "If he deliberately concealed the client termination during settlement negotiations," Carla said, "that constitutes fraud. That is not just a family law matter. That is potentially a criminal matter." The water glass was still on the table. Arielle picked it up, drank, set it down. "What do I do?" she said. "You let me and Patricia handle the legal mechanism," Carla said. "And you keep doing what you've been doing. You go to work, you take care of your daughter. You document everything you can remember about any financial conversations you had with Damian before the settlement." "I managed the household finances," Arielle said. "I was in those accounts. I would have caught it." "He removed you from access to the business accounts 18 months before the separation," Carla said. "Patricia found the date in the bank records. You were removed from the business account access on September 14th of the year before you left." "Do you remember that?" September. Leora would have been conceived in April. Arielle had been 5 months pregnant in September. She had not noticed. She had never had reason to access those specific accounts. They were business operating accounts, not household accounts. She had noticed nothing because she had been managing her own health, a pregnancy, a household, and the slow encroaching distance of a marriage quietly deteriorating. He had removed her access to the information she would have needed to catch him. He had done it while she was pregnant. She sat at the kitchen table in her Indianapolis apartment with its real furniture and its handprint on the refrigerator and its parking structure view, and she understood, in a way she had not understood before, that she had not left a man who had made a terrible mistake. She had left a man who had been carefully, patiently, building a version of their life that she would never fully see. And the worst of it, the part that hit last and landed hardest, was that she could not even ask herself why she hadn't noticed. She knew why. She had been doing what people do when they love someone and trust someone and have built their life in proximity to that trust. She had been living, and he had been planning. "Carla," she said, her voice was very quiet, "I want to pursue the fraud finding." "I thought you would," Carla said. "I've already drafted the motion." "Good," Arielle said. She ended the call. She sat for a long moment in the silence of the apartment. Leora was at Deborah's for another 2 hours. The radiator was quiet for once. The parking structure light came through the curtains in its usual orange wash. She had come to Indianapolis with $4,000 and a newborn and a plan that extended only 24 hours at a time. She had rebuilt something real, something hers, from a starting point that most people in her position would have called insufficient. And now she understood that the starting point had been even lower than she knew, that the ground she had climbed from had been deeper than she had been told. She could collapse under that. She could let the weight of it, the deliberateness of it, the sustained and patient cruelty of a man who had been planning his own protection while she was pregnant with his child, press her down into a place she would not easily come back from. Or she could do the thing she had been doing since March. She stood up from the table. She washed the water glass. She picked up her phone and called Patricia Holden in Dallas. "I know," Patricia said, before Arielle had said anything. "Carla called me. We're filing Thursday." "What do you need from me?" Arielle said. "Honestly," Patricia said, "just keep being you. Because right now you're the most credible person in this entire case, and the contrast between what you've built and what he's done is going to matter enormously in that courtroom." Arielle looked at the handprint on the refrigerator. Leora's tiny palm, rendered in red paint, preserved on paper, hung up with a magnet that said a city's name like a declaration. "I'm not doing this for the courtroom," Arielle said. "I know that too," Patricia said. "That's why it's going to work." She hung up. She had 2 hours before she needed to get Leora. She sat back down at the table and opened her laptop and pulled up the Harmon Group file, and she went back to work, because work was the thing that was hers, and the thing that was real, and the thing that no one, not Damian, not Renata Voss, not Hendricks with his smooth quarterly billing voice, could reach into and take from her. She worked until it was time to get her daughter. Then she got up, got her keys, and went to get her daughter. The fraud motion landed in Dallas on a Thursday. By Friday morning, Damian's attorney had filed an emergency response characterizing the forensic findings as a misinterpretation of standard business accounting practices during a period of planned restructuring. By Friday afternoon, Damian had called Patricia Holden's office 4 times. Patricia's assistant logged each call. Patricia returned none of them. Arielle found out about the calls from Patricia on Friday evening, standing in the parking lot of the grocery store with Leora in the carrier and 2 bags of groceries in her hands, the November air cutting through her coat like it had a grievance. "He's scared," Patricia said. "Good," Arielle said. "Scared people make mistakes. I want you to be ready for that." "What kind of mistakes?" "The kind where they stop thinking about strategy and start thinking about winning," Patricia said. "Those are different things. Strategy is slow and deliberate. Winning is emotional. When people shift from one to the other, they overreach." Arielle transferred 1 grocery bag to her elbow and unlocked the car. "Tell me what overreach looks like." "In this case?" Patricia paused. "He might try to contact you directly. He might try to negotiate privately, outside of counsel. If that happens, you say nothing, you end the contact, and you call me within the hour." "He won't do that." "He might," Patricia said. He's out of good options, and he knows it. The forensic report is a problem he cannot explain away. His attorney can file language about restructuring, but Howard Pell's numbers don't move. Numbers don't restructure. Arielle got Leora into the car seat. The baby looked at her with the wide, considering eyes she had developed lately. 8 months old now, taking everything in, storing it. Arielle buckled the straps. She kissed Leora's forehead. She got in the driver's seat and closed the door. "Patricia," she said, "how long before we're in front of a judge?" "The fraud motion hearing is set for January 14th, Patricia said. January 14th. Arielle closed her eyes for 1 second. Leora's birthday. 1 year. "Okay," she said. "I know," Patricia said quietly. "It's fine. Let's use it." December arrived and the case metastasized. Damian's attorney filed 3 supplemental motions in 11 days. A challenge to the forensic accountant's methodology, a renewed push on the parental alienation argument, and a motion requesting that the custody evaluation be conducted by a different guardian ad litem on the grounds that Dr. Cole's report demonstrated bias toward the residential parent. The third motion, Carla told Arielle, was a long shot. The second was a recycled version of an argument that had already been weakened by the phone records. The first was the only one with any technical legs, and Howard Pell had already begun preparing his rebuttal. They were throwing everything they had, which meant, as Patricia had predicted, that they were no longer thinking about strategy. Arielle understood this intellectually. She understood it the way she understood Howard Pell's report, clearly, completely, at a level of analytical confidence that she trusted. What she was less equipped for was the physical reality of living inside a legal siege during the month of December, in a city where she had been building a life for 9 months, where the grocery store clerks knew her name now, where Deborah sent Leora home on Fridays with a small art project and a note about what the baby had done that week, where Sandra from the community center had become someone she texted not just about childcare logistics, but about the ordinary texture of days. She had built something here, small and imperfect and real. And every motion Damian's attorney filed was a hand reaching through the wall of it. She did not say this out loud to anyone. She went to work. She handled the Harmon group. She attended the Saturday morning group with Leora and drank Sandra's coffee and listened to the other women talk about sleep regressions and pediatric appointments and the particular exhaustion of the season. She went home. She fed the baby. She put Leora to bed and sat at the table and reviewed whatever Carla had sent that day and responded to it, and then closed the laptop and made herself stop. She did not always sleep. On the night she did not sleep, she lay in the real bed and looked at the ceiling and did the things she had learned to do in the worst weeks after leaving Dallas. She broke the problem into its components, arranged them by what she could control and what she could not, and focused on the first category until the paralysis of the second stopped pressing so hard against her chest. She could control her work. She could control her documentation. She could control how she showed up for Leora. She could control the quality of her case. She could not control what Damian did next. She lay in the dark and accepted that, for the 11,000th time, and eventually slept. He called on a Tuesday in mid-December. Not through counsel. His personal number, which she had never deleted because deleting it had felt, at some point in March, like a gesture too small for what had happened. She was at her desk when the phone lit up. She looked at the number. She looked at it for 4 rings. She answered. "Arielle." His voice was the same. That was the thing that hit her first. She had been carrying a version of him in her memory that had calcified into something monstrous, and his voice was just his voice. Familiar the way the smell of a house you grew up in is familiar. It did not mean anything, but it landed. "You need to call Hendricks," she said. "I'm not doing this." "Wait, please, just 2 minutes. Damian? I know what I did." His voice was tight, not the smooth, measured voice she remembered from their life together. Something compressed in it. "I know what I did, and I know the report is what it is, and I'm not calling to fight you on that." She said nothing. "I want to see her," he said. "That's all. I'm not the motions, the lawyers, all of it. I just want to see my daughter." Her hand on the phone was completely still. "You've had 9 months to request a supervised visit through proper channels," she said. "You did not do that. You spent 9 months filing motions and submitting false declarations and trying to freeze my finances. I know." "You know," she said. The words came out flat and precise. You keep saying that. I know. You knew the night I was in that hospital alone. You know a lot of things, and it doesn't seem to change what you do. A long silence. What do I have to do? He said. Tell me what I have to do. You want a number, she said. You want me to give you a task. You want this to be a negotiation. Arielle, call Hendricks, she said. Have him call Carla. If you want to establish a relationship with your daughter, do it through the process. That's what it exists for. She ended the call. She set the phone face down on the desk. She sat completely still for 30 seconds, breathing with the deliberate slowness of someone managing a physiological response. Her heart was hitting her ribs harder than she would have liked. Her jaw was tight. She consciously unclenched it. Then she picked up the phone and called Carla. He called me directly, she said when Carla picked up. Personal number. He said he wants to see Leora. I told him to go through counsel and ended the call. I'm logging it now. Good, Carla said. Time? 2:17 p.m. I'll send you the call log. This is good for us, Carla said. Direct contact outside of counsel is exactly the kind of conduct pattern the judge will want to know about. I know, Arielle said. That's not why I'm calling. A beat. I know that either, Carla said. Are you okay? Yes, Arielle said. I'll send the log. She sent the log. She went back to the Harmon group file. Her hand steadied within 4 minutes, which was 3 minutes faster than the last time something like this had shaken her, and she filed that improvement away as data, as evidence that she was getting stronger in the specific ways this kind of thing required. January 14th arrived on a Wednesday. Arielle had flown to Dallas the night before, leaving Leora with Carol, who had driven up from her home in Central Texas and was staying in the apartment for the week. Carol had taken the baby from Arielle's arms in the airport departure area and looked at her daughter's face with the specific scrutiny of a woman who has known her child for 30 years. You look like your father when he was trying not to show he was scared, Carol said. I'm not scared, Arielle said. Your father said that too, Carol said. Then she kissed Arielle's cheek. Go win. Arielle's flight landed at 10:40 at night. She took a car to the hotel, a plain business district hotel that she had chosen specifically because it was not near anything she and Damian had ever gone together. And she sat on the hotel bed in her coat for a few minutes before she could make herself move. The room was beige and functional. The heating unit under the window ran with a low mechanical hum. She could hear the highway from outside. She unpacked what she needed for tomorrow. Her suit, charcoal gray, well-fitted now, she had lost and then stabilized, and the suit was right again. Her documents, already organized in a binder that Carla had put together and that Arielle had read through 3 times on the plane. The physical copies of everything, the hotel receipt, the phone records, the forensic report, Howard Pell's rebuttal to the methodology challenge, Dr. Cole's evaluation, the child support payment record showing 1 payment in 9 months, the call log from December including Damian's unsolicited direct contact. She laid everything in order on the small desk. She showered, she set 2 alarms, she lay down. She did not sleep for a long time. She was not anxious exactly. She was the way she got before something large, a heightened alertness that her body interpreted as sleeplessness, and that her brain, if she let it, could use productively. She thought about Leora. Not strategically, just Leora. The way she had started pulling herself up on the edge of the couch, the sound she made in the morning when she heard Arielle's alarm and was already awake and waiting, the weight of her when she fell asleep in the carrier and her head dropped against Arielle's collarbone like she had decided there was nowhere safer. She thought about that weight until she fell asleep. The courthouse was gray stone and December cold even in January, which was a Texas kind of cold, more theatrical than Indianapolis cold, more interested in being noticed. Patricia was outside when Arielle arrived, talking on her phone, the kind of compact and focused she got when she was in a preceding day. She ended the call when she saw Arielle and looked at her the way she had been looking at her since that first meeting in February of the previous year, with the clinical attentiveness of someone whose job requires seeing people accurately. "How are you?" Patricia said. "Ready," Arielle said. "Good." Hendricks filed a last-minute response this morning on the methodology challenge. Howard's already responded. Don't let it rattle you. It's noise. I know it's noise. I know you know. I'm telling you anyway. Patricia held the door. The judge is Miriam Varga. I've been in front of her before. She is interested in facts. She does not respond well to emotional performance from either side. You're going to be fine. They went in. Damian was already in the courtroom. Arielle had known he would be. She had prepared for it, prepared for the particular experience of seeing him in person for the first time in 10 months. In this specific context, across a room with a judicial bench between them and everything that had happened in the preceding year arranged in folders and binders and certified copies on both tables. She had prepared for it, and it still hit her. Not with love, not with the pull of what they had been, which she had feared. It hit her with something more disorienting. The sheer fact of his physical reality. He was a person. He was the father of her daughter. He was sitting at a table in a charcoal suit, and his posture was careful and controlled, and he looked like the man she had married, the version that had assembled the crib and listened to her talk about yield curves. And underneath that surface was everything she now knew was also true. Both things. Still both things. She had not figured out how to make them not be both things, and standing in the doorway of a Dallas courtroom was not when she was going to figure it out. She sat down next to Patricia. She did not look at him again. Judge Varga was 60, economical, with a manner that communicated no interest in drama while simultaneously suggesting she would recognize it instantly. She opened the proceeding by noting the consolidated matters before the court, the fraud motion related to settlement financial disclosure, the contested custody evaluation, and the cross motions on relocation and child support compliance. She looked at both tables. I have read the documentation submitted by both parties, she said. I want to be clear before we begin that I am not interested in narrative. I am interested in facts, in evidence, and in the demonstrated behavior of the parties as it relates to the welfare of the minor child. We will proceed accordingly. Hendricks presented first. He was smooth and structured, and he made the best possible case for Damian, framing the concealed client termination as an accounting timing issue rather than deliberate misrepresentation, framing the false declaration as a good faith misrecollection from an independent witness, framing Damian's lack of contact with his daughter as a direct result of Arielle's obstruction. Arielle sat and listened and took notes and kept her face entirely still. When Patricia stood up, she did not raise her voice once. She walked Judge Varga through the timeline, the hotel receipt, the date, the labor records, the checkout time and the delivery time placed side by side. She did not editorialize. She presented the documents and let the documents present themselves. She walked through the financial records, the date the primary client contract was terminated, the date Arielle was removed from the business account access, the date the separation agreement was signed, and the information asymmetry that had existed at that signing. Howard Pell was called and delivered his methodology defense with the calm authority of someone who has explained his work to skeptical audiences many times and finds the skepticism mildly entertaining. She walked through the phone records. The absence of any communication between Arielle's number and Renata Voss's number. The specific date and time of the call that the declaration claimed had occurred, cross-referenced with Arielle's documented phone history, which showed a 17-minute call to her mother and a 12-minute call to Patricia Holden's office during the same window. She walked through the child support records, one payment in 9 months. She walked through Dr. Cole's evaluation. She walked through the call log from December, direct contact, personal number, outside of counsel. She put the documents down. Ms. Vaughn left Texas, Patricia said, with $4,000, a 6-week-old infant, and documentation of everything I have just presented to this court. She did not leave in retaliation. She left because she had assembled the facts of her situation and made a rational decision about what her daughter's life required. Everything she has done since then, every professional choice, every financial decision, every parenting decision, has been consistent with that assessment. The record demonstrates this with clarity. She sat down. Arielle did not move. Judge Varga asked Damian to take the stand. He was composed when he sat down. He was composed through the first several questions. Hendricks walking him through a redirect that tried to soften the financial disclosure issue into something that sounded like confusion rather than concealment. Then Patricia stood for Cross. "Mr. Cross," she said. "On January 14th of last year, What time did you check into the Beaumont Hotel? I... He stopped. His jaw moved slightly. I don't recall the exact time. Patricia placed the receipt in front of him. The receipt indicates 7:14 p.m. Does that appear accurate to you? It may be. And your daughter was born at what time on January 14th? A pause. 4:22 a.m., he said. So between 7:14 p.m. and 4:22 a.m., while your wife was in active labor alone in a hospital, you were at the Beaumont Hotel. Yes. The word fell into the courtroom like a stone into still water. You were aware she was in labor when you checked in. His composure cracked at the edges. I had received a text. Yes. You received a text telling you your wife was in labor, and you checked into a hotel suite. I know how that... I'm not asking how it looks, Patricia said. I'm asking if it's factually accurate. Yes, he said. His voice was different now. The smooth, professional register had slipped. Underneath it was something raw and cornered, the sound of a man who has run out of room. And in the 9 months since your daughter was born, Patricia said, how many times have you requested a scheduled call or visit through legal channels to maintain a relationship with her? The silence lasted long enough that Judge Varga looked up from her notes. None, Damian said. How many child support payments have you made pursuant to the August order? 1. Out of how many required? He looked at the table in front of him. 4. Patricia nodded once. She picked up her papers. She looked at Judge Varga. Nothing further, she said, and sat down. Hendricks attempted a redirect. He asked Damian to explain the circumstances of the missed payments, business cash flow issues, legal expenses, the complicated context of the separation. He asked Damian to explain what reconciliation had looked like from his perspective, to give the court a sense of his intentions going forward. Damian spoke carefully. He said the right words. He said he understood the impact of his actions. He said he wanted a chance to be present in his daughter's life. He said people could change. Arielle sat and listened. She had heard variations of these words before, not from him specifically. He had never offered them so formally, so structured, so evidently prepared with an audience in mind. But she recognized the architecture of them, the acknowledgement positioned as an overture, the regret deployed as an argument, the future painted in terms of what he might do rather than the documented record of what he had done. She watched Judge Varga while Damian talked. The judge's face was giving nothing away, but she was making notes with the specific rhythm of someone noting discrepancies rather than collecting testimony. When Damian stepped down, Judge Varga looked at both tables. I'll take this under advisement, she said. I expect to have a ruling within 10 business days. In the interim, the existing arrangements remain in place, and the child support order stands fully enforceable. She gathered her materials. She stood. Everyone stood. The gavel came down. Outside the courthouse, Patricia walked with Arielle to the car that was waiting. The January air was cold and bright, the kind of Dallas winter day that could not decide whether it was a season or an inconvenience. How do you think it went? Arielle said. I think Judge Varga is thorough and she doesn't like waste, Patricia said. I think the timeline presentation landed. I think Hendricks overreached on the methodology challenge and it showed. She paused. I think Damian answered the January 14th questions in a way that will be difficult to walk back. But you won't tell me it's over. It's not over until she rules, Patricia said. You know that. I know. A car passed on the street below. Somewhere behind them, through the courthouse doors they had just come through. Whatever came next was already in motion, already being weighed, already moving toward the thing that would either hold or not hold, and she could not see it yet, could not reach it, could only stand on the courthouse steps in the January cold and wait for the earth to settle or shift beneath her. She had done everything she could do. She had built the case the only way it could be built, fact by fact, document by document, choice by choice. Over 10 months that had cost her things she was still calculating. She had not exaggerated. She had not performed. She had simply told the truth and backed it with evidence and shown up. She looked out at Dallas, the city where she had built a life and lost it, and begun to understand what it had actually been. and she felt the particular stillness of someone standing at the exact center of the thing that has defined the last year of their existence, knowing that the next 10 business days would determine which direction the rest of it went. Her phone buzzed. A text from Carol. Leora just pulled herself to standing using the coffee table and looked extremely proud of herself. Photo attached. She opened the photo. Leora stood gripping the edge of the coffee table with both fists, her knees slightly bent, her face aimed at the camera with the expression of someone who has just discovered a capability she was not previously aware of and intends to use it extensively. Arielle looked at that face. She breathed in once, slowly, through the cold Dallas air. She typed back, "Tell her I saw." She put the phone in her pocket. She got in the car. She had a flight back to Indianapolis in 3 hours, and a daughter who was learning to stand, and 10 days to wait for a judge to tell her what the last year of her life had. The 10 days felt like a different kind of waiting than anything that had come before. Not the sharp, adrenaline-edged waiting of the courtroom. Not the grinding, defensive waiting of the months when motions arrived like weather. Unpredictable, damaging, requiring immediate response. This was slower, heavier. The waiting of someone who has done everything they can do and now has to sit with the fact that the outcome is no longer in their hands. Arielle went to work. She handled the Harmon Group. She attended a presentation meeting with 2 of the firm's largest regional clients and contributed 3 observations that Janet later described, in the understated way Janet described things, as the reason the meeting went the way it went. She picked up Leora from Deborah's every evening and fed her, and bathed her, and read to her from the board books on the shelf. The same 3 books in the same rotation because Leora had developed opinions about books, and these were the ones withstanding. She did not tell people she was waiting for a ruling. Sandra knew, in the general way Sandra had come to know the shape of Arielle's situation over months of Saturday mornings and exchanged texts. Deborah knew because Deborah noticed everything and asked direct questions and expected direct answers. Janet knew because Janet was observant and because she had covered for Arielle during the Dallas trip without requiring an explanation. Everyone else in Arielle's life, the colleagues she had lunch with occasionally, the neighbor on the 3rd floor who held the elevator and asked about the baby, saw a woman who appeared to be doing fine, which was not entirely a performance. She was doing fine in the way that people who have been tested extensively develop a tolerance for difficulty that reads, from the outside, as composure. She was also not sleeping through the night. She was waking at 3 a.m. with her heart already running, her body convinced that something required her immediate attention, and then lying in the dark waiting for her nervous system to understand that there was nothing to respond to yet. She had gotten very good at waiting. She had not gotten used to it. The ruling came on a Thursday, 9 days after the hearing. Carla called at 11:14 a.m. Arielle was in her office, door closed, on the phone with the Harmon Group's CFO about a discrepancy in the Q4 projection. She saw Carla's name on the screen and told the CFO she needed to call him back and ended it before he had finished his sentence. "I have the ruling," Carla said. Arielle put her hand flat on the desk. "Tell me." Carla told her. The fraud finding was upheld. Judge Varga had accepted Howard Pell's methodology and his conclusion that Damian's financial disclosure during settlement negotiations had materially misrepresented the value of the marital estate. The settlement agreement was vacated and a revised calculation ordered, which meant Arielle was entitled to a substantially larger sum than she had received. The number Carla had told her in November, the number she had not let herself fully believe. The parental alienation motion was denied. Judge Varga had found no credible evidence of deliberate interference with the father's parental relationship, noting in the ruling that the documented absence of any formal request for contact or visitation from the father over the preceding 9 months substantially undermined the allegation. Renata Voss's declaration had been struck from the record. The judge had noted, with the measured language of someone who had seen this kind of thing before and found it tedious, that the declaration described a communication for which no technical evidence existed and which contradicted verifiable phone records. She had referred the matter to the State Bar Association for review of whether the submission constituted a knowing presentation of fabricated evidence. The child support arrearage, 3 missed payments, was ordered paid in full within 30 days with interest. The visitation request was denied. Arielle's hand was still flat on the desk. She pressed it down harder, feeling the surface, needing the solidity of something physical. "The visitation," she said. "Tell me the language." Carla read from the ruling. Judge Varga had written that granting visitation rights at this juncture would serve the petitioner's expressed desire for access rather than any demonstrated interest in the child's welfare, given the petitioner's documented absence of effort to establish or maintain a parental relationship during the child's first year of life. She had noted that the child had no existing relationship with the petitioner to protect or preserve, and that introducing a parental figure into a settled and stable environment on the basis of the petitioner's current remorse rather than any established attachment would create disruption without corresponding benefit to the minor child. Arielle read the language twice in her head. The petitioner's current remorse rather than any established attachment. It was the most precise description of Damian she had ever encountered in a legal document, possibly in any document. "Arielle," Carla said, "this is a significant win, across every motion." "I know," Arielle said. "Are you okay?" She thought about that question. She looked at her hand on the desk. She looked at the Harmon group file open on her screen, the CFO's last message still visible, a question about numbers that she would answer, and that would be right, and that would matter to someone's quarterly projection, and that was, in its own small way, proof that she was still here, still functioning, still the person she had rebuilt herself into being. "I will be," she said. "Give me the next steps." She called Patricia next. Patricia said, "I saw it, and the brevity of it contained everything. The year of work, the documentation, the methodology, the hours logged and billed and absorbed and fought for." "The settlement recalculation," Arielle said. "How long will that take to process?" 6 to 8 weeks for the formal order," Patricia said. "Damian has 30 days to file an appeal." "Will he?" Patricia was quiet for a moment. "His business has lost 2 major clients in the past 3 months. Kevin Marsh terminated the partnership in December. I assume you know that." She had not known that. Priya had not mentioned it. She filed it away. "No. The partnership is dissolved. Damian's firm is operating at significantly reduced capacity. An appeal requires legal fees he may not be able to sustain." Patricia paused. "I think he's done. But I've been wrong about that before with people like him, so we watch the 30-day window." "We watch it," Arielle said. "And Arielle," Patricia's voice changed register slightly. Not softer exactly, but less procedural. "I've been doing this for 30 years. I don't say this often. What you built over the past year, the documentation, the discipline, the consistency, that is what won this. Not luck, not sympathy. Evidence. You gave me evidence I could use, and you never stopped giving it to me." Arielle looked at the window of her office. The parking structure was visible from here too, the same as from her apartment, a different angle. She thought about that for a half second, how the parking structure had become a kind of landmark for her year, always there, always the same concrete color, indifferent and solid. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." "Call me if he files," Patricia said. He did not file. The 30 days passed in the particular silence of something that has finally stopped moving. Arielle checked her email every morning with the specific alertness of someone watching for a deadline, and then on the 31st day she woke up and checked, and there was nothing from Patricia, and she lay back down and looked at the ceiling and understood that it was over. The legal part of it, anyway. The legal part was over. The money arrived in March. Not all at once. The revised settlement dispersed in 2 tranches, the first in late February and the second in mid-March, and the child support arrearage came separately, and there was a small additional amount related to legal cost recovery that Carla had fought for and won. Arielle tracked all of it with the same spreadsheet discipline she had applied to everything financial for the past year, cross-referencing against what she owed Carol, what she owed in legal fees, what she needed to set aside for taxes. When she was done with the spreadsheet, she sat at the kitchen table, the real table, not the card table, the table she had bought in October when she could finally afford something that wasn't temporary, and she looked at the numbers. She had paid Carol back in full. She had paid Carla in full, and sent a handwritten note with the final check because some things deserved more than an electronic transfer. She had paid Patricia in full, and sent a different handwritten note that took 3 drafts because she kept writing things that felt either too small or too large, and finally landed on something that was simply true. You gave me the tools to fight with. Everything else was already mine. After everything was settled, after taxes were accounted for, after the emergency reserve she had promised herself was fully funded, after all of that, she had enough to put a down payment on a house. Not a large house. Not a mansion in North Dallas with stone facades and sculpted hedges and double-height windows. A 3-bedroom house in a neighborhood 12 minutes from the office, with a backyard that had a maple tree in it, and a kitchen with south-facing windows, and a room that would be Leora's room that got morning light. She made an offer in April. It was accepted 2 days later. She signed the closing documents on a Friday afternoon and drove to the house, her house, and sat in the driveway for a few minutes before going in. The maple tree in the backyard was beginning to come in. The south-facing windows were catching the late afternoon light. The neighborhood was quiet in the way that residential neighborhoods are quiet on Friday afternoons, the particular settled stillness of people who have gotten home and closed their doors. She went inside. She stood in the empty living room. The floors were hardwood, slightly scuffed in one corner from the previous owners. The walls were an off-white that she was going to paint, not immediately, but eventually, and she had already decided on the colors for Leora's room, a soft yellow that she had found in a design magazine Sandra had left at her apartment and never reclaimed. She stood in the empty living room of her house, and she did not cry, and she did not perform anything for anyone, because there was no one there. It was just her, in a room that was hers, in a house that she had bought with money she had earned, and money she had fought for, and money that represented, in some accounting she could not fully quantify, the cost of the past 14 months. She stood there for a while. Then she got in the car and went to get Leora. Deborah was on the porch when Arielle pulled up, which was unusual. She was standing with her arms crossed, and her expression was the specific one she got when something had happened that she found either impressive or concerning, and had not yet decided which. She walked, Deborah said. Arielle stopped walking. What? About an hour ago, clear across the sunroom, 7 steps, maybe 8, very determined. Sat down hard at the end of it and looked at me like she expected applause. Deborah's mouth moved towards something that was not quite a smile, but was in that neighborhood. I would have called, but I thought you'd rather see for yourself. Arielle went inside. Leora was in the sunroom, sitting on the play mat, engaged in the process of stacking 2 soft blocks and then knocking them over, which she had been doing for 3 weeks with consistent satisfaction. She looked up when Arielle came in. Her face did the thing it did. The specific full-face arrangement of a 13-month-old who has seen the person they most want to see. Not just happy, but settled, the way a room settles when you open a window and the right kind of air comes through. Arielle sat down on the mat across from her. I heard you walked, she said. Leora picked up one of the blocks and held it out toward Arielle with the authority of someone presenting a gift. Arielle took the block. She turned it over in her hands. She looked at her daughter, who was already looking at the next block with the focused intention of a person with a plan. Do it again, Arielle said. Leora looked at her. Walk, Arielle said. Come here. Leora regarded her for a moment with the considering expression that Arielle had come to understand meant she was running internal calculations. Then she leaned forward, got her hands on the mat, pushed herself up to standing, knees bent, arms slightly out, the posture of someone newly acquainted with vertical, and looked at Arielle from 3 feet away. Yeah, Arielle said. That's it. Come here. Leora took 3 steps. 4. Her arms went out wider. Her face was concentrated, serious. The expression of someone doing something that requires everything they have. She made it to Arielle's knees and grabbed both of them with both hands and stood there, gripping, looking up with an expression that Arielle would carry inside her chest for the rest of her life. She picked her daughter up. She held her against her shoulder the way she had held her in a parking lot in Dallas on a March morning 14 months ago, in the cold, outside a motel with the number 114 on the door. I bought us a house, she said into Leora's hair. It has a tree in the backyard. Leora made a sound that was not quite a word yet. She was close. Deborah said she'd been making sounds that wanted to be words for 3 weeks, and it was only a matter of time. Arielle held her and did not say anything else. She ran into Damian once more, not in a courtroom, not through lawyers, in person at a national financial consulting conference in Chicago in October, 2 years after leaving Dallas, standing at the coffee station outside the main conference hall with a cup in her hand and a lanyard around her neck that said, Arielle Vosh, Wahwat Pshkoyan. Cross Varshim Financial Strategies in the clean sans serif font that the firm's new design standards used. The firm was not Janet's anymore, technically. Janet had moved to a managing director role with the parent company in the spring, and the promotion that had been discussed at the end of Arielle's first year had materialized and then grown into something larger than either of them had originally outlined. The name on the lanyard reflected a partnership that had been formalized 6 months ago. The consulting firm that had once given Arielle a junior analyst position now had her name on the letterhead. She was standing at the coffee station when she saw him across the conference foyer. He was thinner than she remembered, not unhealthily thin, just the thinness of someone whose life had contracted, who was carrying less than they used to. He was with another man she did not recognize, both of them with conference lanyards, both of them looking toward the main hall where the morning keynote was about to begin. He saw her at the same moment she saw him. Neither of them moved for a second. The conference foyer moved around them, the sound of several hundred professionals beginning their morning, the specific ambient noise of an industry event, coffee cups and rolling luggage, and the murmur of people who know each other talking across 10 feet of carpet. He said something to the man he was with. The man nodded and moved toward the hall. Damian crossed the foyer. Arielle did not move toward him or away. She stood where she was. He stopped a reasonable distance away. Not the distance of intimacy, the distance of two people who have a complicated shared history and are standing in a public room and both know it. He looked at her lanyard. Congratulations, he said. I heard about the partnership. Thank you, she said. He looked older than she remembered too, not in a way that generated sympathy, in the way that faces look older when the internal resources that used to maintain a particular presentation have been redirected toward survival. How is she? He said. She's well, Arielle said. She started preschool in September. She's interested in everything. Something moved across his face, not the blank, convenient acknowledgement she remembered from the kitchen that Saturday afternoon. Something with more texture than that. More cost. I know I don't have the right to ask you for anything, he said. She waited. But I want you to know that I understand what I did, he said. Not the legal version, not what I was asked to account for in the courtroom. What I actually did. To you. To her. I understand it in a way I didn't then. He paused. And I'm not telling you that because I expect it to change anything. I'm telling you because I think you deserve to hear it. Arielle looked at him. She thought about the kitchen, the Saturday afternoon, his voice saying, I know where a different man would have said something else. She thought about the receipt in the blazer pocket. She thought about 17 seconds on a doorstep in Indianapolis, listening to her daughter cry in a stranger's arms, and making herself turn and walk to the car anyway. She thought about the courtroom, the judge's language, the petitioner's current remorse rather than any established attachment. The remorse was real. She could see that it was real. She was not sure it mattered in the way he perhaps hoped it did, and she was not going to pretend otherwise to make either of them more comfortable. I appreciate you saying it, she said. And she meant that. Not generously, not with warmth, just accurately. It cost him something to say it, and the cost was appropriate, and she was not going to perform forgiveness she had not arrived at yet. She has your eyes, she said, in case you wanted to know something real. He looked at her for a long moment. Take care of yourself, Damian, she said. She picked up her coffee. She walked toward the main hall where the keynote was beginning. She did not look back. She found her seat near the front, pulled out her program, and read the speaker's biography with the focused attention of someone who had learned to be present in the moment in front of her, because the moment in front of her was where her life actually was. Her phone buzzed. She looked at it under the edge of the program. A photo from the woman who watched Leora in the mornings before preschool. A woman named May, who lived 2 streets over, and who had become, over the past year, someone Arielle would have used the word friend to describe without any qualification. The photo was Leora at the breakfast table, serious-faced, conducting an apparently important negotiation with a bowl of oatmeal. The text said, "She says she doesn't want raisins today. I said they were already in there. She is considering her options." Arielle looked at that face, the serious, considering, fully inhabited face of a 2-year-old who has opinions, and the language now to express them, and a table to sit at, and a person across from her who is paying attention. She typed back, "Tell her the raisins are non-negotiable. Stand firm." She put the phone in her bag. The keynote speaker began. That evening, she called Carol. It was the kind of call they had settled into over the past 2 years. Not logistical, not crisis management, just the ordinary texture of two people who know each other well enough to talk about nothing in particular and have it mean something. Carol asked about the conference. Arielle told her about the morning session, the afternoon panel she had been on, the colleague from a Boston firm who had asked to be put in touch for a potential collaboration. "The partnership thing is really happening," Carol said. It was not a question. "It's been happening for 6 months, Mom." "I know, I'm still getting used to it." A pause. "Your father would have had a very complicated reaction to all of this." Arielle smiled slightly. "He would have been proud and felt vaguely threatened simultaneously." "That's exactly right," Carol said. "That's him exactly." They talked for another 20 minutes. Carol mentioned that she was thinking about visiting in November, around Leora's birthday. Arielle said that would be good. They discussed the logistics of Carol's drive, the question of whether Arielle's guest room was ready, the fact that Leora had recently developed a strong attachment to a specific stuffed rabbit that Carol had sent in a package last spring, and that Carol should know this rabbit was now a critical diplomatic figure in all household negotiations. "She sounds like you," Carol said. "She sounds like herself," Arielle said. "That's the better version." After the call, she sat in the hotel room in Chicago. A real hotel, a good one. The kind where the business is paying and the room is not a question of budget. And she looked out the window at the Chicago skyline at night, the lights on the water, the specific and unrepeatable geography of a city that was not hers, but that she was looking at from a position she had built herself into. She thought about the woman who had driven out of Dallas at 5 in the morning with a newborn in the back seat and $4,300 and no plan beyond the next day. She could see her clearly. She did not see a broken person when she looked at her. She saw someone who had been handed a specific set of impossible circumstances and had made from them choices, sometimes good, sometimes barely sufficient, sometimes just the next thing that needed doing, that had compounded over 14 months into a life. Not the life she had planned at 25. Not the life she had believed she was building in Dallas. Something different. Something that did not require anyone else's participation to be real. The backyard party happened on a Saturday in June, Leora's second summer, the summer Arielle turned 32. She had not planned it as a party exactly. It had started as a small gathering. Carol, Deborah, Sandra, and her daughter, May and her family, a few colleagues, Carla, who happened to be in Indianapolis for a different matter and who Arielle had asked on an impulse that turned out to be the right impulse. It had expanded in the way that good things sometimes expand when you stop trying to control their edges. 40 people in her backyard on a Saturday in June. String lights she had put up herself the previous weekend, with Leora on her hip pointing at each bulb with the focused interest of someone being shown something important. The maple tree full and green. The south-facing kitchen windows open, letting the sound of the party come in and the smell of the backyard go out. Grant Mercer arrived with the kind of quiet that was not shyness, but was rather the quality of someone who was comfortable enough in themselves to not require immediate attention. He was a colleague of Carla's. They had met at a bar association fundraiser 3 months earlier, and Arielle had met him twice since then, both times in the context of events that were not dates, and both times with the particular awareness that she was thinking about him more than the context warranted. He helped carry chairs from the garage without being asked. He introduced himself to Carol with the specific ease of someone who respects older women without performing it. He sat on the ground near the maple tree and allowed Leora, who had decided he was interesting, to investigate him with the thoroughness that 2-year-olds apply to people they have not yet categorized. "What's your name?" Leora asked him. This was her current primary conversational tool. Grant, he said. She considered this. That's a funny name, she said. I know, he said. I've had it a long time. She handed him the rabbit. This was, Arielle understood from the doorway where she was standing with a glass of water, a significant gesture. The rabbit did not go to people Leora had not assessed and approved. She watched Grant accept the rabbit with the appropriate seriousness the situation required. She watched him hand it back. She watched Leora take it, examine it to confirm its condition, and then sit down next to him with the settled air of someone who has made a decision. Carol appeared at Arielle's shoulder. Who is that? Carol said. Someone I know, Arielle said. Does he know you know him? Mom, I'm asking a simple question. Yes, Arielle said. He knows. Carol made a sound that was not a word but communicated a complete sentence. Arielle did not respond to it. She watched Leora and Grant and the rabbit under the maple tree, and she felt something she had not let herself feel for a long time without immediately analyzing it. Something simple and present and uncomplicated by what it might become or what it might cost. She let it be. Later that night, after the last guests had gone and Carol was washing dishes in the kitchen despite being told she did not have to, after Leora was in her yellow room with the morning light windows and the rabbit under her arm and the slow, steady breath of deep sleep, Arielle stood at the back door and looked at the backyard. The string lights were still on. The maple tree held them at its edges, the bulbs catching in the leaves. The chairs were still arranged in the loose configurations people had made during the evening, conversation geometries that had dissolved when the people left, but whose shapes remained in the grass. She had done this, not with ease, not without cost. With her hands and her discipline and her mother's money, temporarily borrowed and fully returned, and the documentation of a hotel receipt that she had found in a blazer pocket, and had the presence of mind to return to its exact position before removing it 3 days later. With the 17 seconds on a front step in March. With the 4 blocks of crying in a car on a Monday morning. With the forensic accountant's report and the phone records, and the judge's language and the 30-day window that closed in silence. With everything she had kept, every morning she had gotten up when not getting up would have been the easier thing. Every bill she had paid, every brief she had read at 11 p.m. at a card table, every feeding at 2 a.m., and every alarm at 6, and every blazer she had tugged straight in parking garage mirrors, and every meeting she had walked into carrying things no one in the room knew she was carrying. She had done this. Carol came to the door behind her. She looked out at the backyard. She did not say anything for a moment. It's a good house, Carol said. Yeah, Arielle said. She's a good kid. She's a great kid. Carol put her hand on Arielle's shoulder. Not a gesture of comfort exactly, more the gesture of one person standing next to another and wanting the other person to know they are not standing alone. Carol had been making this gesture for 32 years, and Arielle knew its weight precisely. I know what it cost you, Carol said. Getting here. I know you do, Arielle said. They stood there together for a while. The string lights held. The maple tree held them. The neighborhood was quiet in the way that summer nights are quiet when the day has been full and the people in the houses are settled and the world has narrowed to the particular and specific dimensions of one backyard, one mother, one daughter, one night in June. Arielle looked at her backyard. She looked at it the way you look at something you built with your hands after the building is finished and the work is done, and what remains is simply the thing itself, imperfect and real and entirely yours. The lights held. She was still standing.